It's a real pleasure for me to speak at this forum of open research in the Middle East and North Africa, and I really appreciate the opportunity to provide an overview and update and inform you today of the recent developments regarding the recommendation on open science. Just quickly, while I put my slides up, I'll apologise that I can't be there to join you in person, but nevertheless, I very much appreciate the chance to be with you. I think we can agree that by making science more efficient, equitable, transparent, collaborative and inclusive, open science has the potential to ensure that science and technology will lead us to innovative, sustainable and inclusive solutions. Open science reaffirms the human right to free access to science and enables providing equal opportunities to everyone to contribute in and to benefit from science. We can better connect science to societal needs. And if done correctly, open science can be a powerful tool to bridge the persisting science, technology and innovation gaps between and within countries. Now, the global fight against the COVID-19 pandemic has been a stark reminder of the need for open science. The pandemic reminded us of the importance of timely and free access to scientific data, to publications and to information. And it showed us that without international scientific collaborations, we cannot ensure resilience of our societies. And these last years have reminded us that without an open dialogue between scientists, citizens and policymakers, science cannot efficiently serve society. And more importantly, through a joint effort in using digital platforms and other communications technologies, scientists, publishers and funders have shown that open science is practical and the most efficient way of practicing and sharing science. So let's look at some numbers. While 70% of all scientific publications are locked behind paywalls, this proportion was significantly lower, only around 25% of publications on COVID-19. And this can perhaps give us a glimpse or a hope of a transition to open science could be enabled in all fields, and an approach perhaps towards addressing other global challenges such as climate change, biodiversity loss, energy and so on. However, in a landscape with a growing need and opportunity to international collaborations in science, a fair and equitable operationalization of open science requires a common understanding of potentials, benefits and challenges of open science. And this can vary in between regions and among different groups of stakeholders. To reach a common consensus on open science, the UNESCO recommendation was developed through a regionally balanced, multi-stakeholder, inclusive and transparent consultation process. This landmark international agreement identifies measures to make science more accessible, the scientific process more inclusive, and the outputs of science more readily available and relevant for society. There were a wide range of stakeholders from the Arab region which provided input to the recommendation, both through a global online survey on open science and through specific online consultation, which was organised by the UNESCO office in Cairo in August 2020. And just let's look at some of the specific concerns that were highlighted by the stakeholders in the Arab region. And that was the need for open science infrastructures, including reliable internet connection and computing facilities, open science infrastructures that benefit all actors in society, open science platforms accessible to everyone beyond the scientific community, providing knowledge on everyday issues and contributing to building a culture of science and scientific literacy, and triggering innovative ideas and solutions, including the design of user-friendly interfaces, the updating of software, cloud computing, etc. And when asked about the challenges and unintended consequences of the open science movement, the stakeholders from the Arab region were particularly concerned about the high fees for publishing in high impact open access journals that affects diversity in science. Many of them also highlighted that incomplete implementation of the principles of open science could lead to unethical use of information and widening of the gaps between developed and developing, between public and the private sector, and between different disciplines of science. And if you're interested and wish to find out more about the different inputs from different regions, please have a look at the reports of the UNESCO global and regional consultations, which are available online. And I'll provide a link to those a little later. So after 2 years of consultation processes, as mentioned, the UNESCO recommendation on open science was adopted by all 193 member states of UNESCO, who participated in the 41st session of its General Conference in November 2021. The recommendation provides a common definition, shared values and principles for open science. And as mentioned, it identifies measures to make science more accessible and inclusive and better linked with society and its needs. So just really a quick overview. Some of the highlights of the recommendation are that it is the first international normative instrument on open science. It contains the first internationally agreed definition of open science. It spells out the consensus core values and guiding principles of open science, addresses multiple actors and stakeholders. It recommends actions on different levels to operationalize the principles of open science. It proposes innovative approaches for open science at different stages of the scientific cycle, and calls for the development of a comprehensive open science monitoring framework. The commonly agreed definition of open science provided by the recommendation builds on 4 pillars, 4 main areas. And one of these is open scientific knowledge, which includes scientific publications, research data, software, source code and hardware available in the public domain or under copyright that's been released under an open license. Open science infrastructures, which refers to scientific equipment or sets of instruments, knowledge-based resources such as collections, repositories, archives and scientific data, open computational and digital infrastructures, which are required to support open science and serve the needs of different communities. The third of these pillars is open engagement of societal actors, such as through citizen and participatory science and other extended collaborations between scientists and societal actors beyond just the scientific community, opening up practices and tools that are part of the research cycle and making the scientific process more inclusive and accessible to a broader inquiring society. And finally, open dialogue with other knowledge systems, which means the recognition of complementaries between diverse epistemologies, including indigenous knowledge systems. And based on these, sorry, I'm stuck with the slide. Based on these pillars, open science aims to make scientific knowledge openly available, accessible, and reusable for everyone. It increases scientific collaborations and sharing of information for the benefits of science and society, and opens the processes of scientific knowledge creation, evaluation, communication to societal actors beyond the traditional scientific community. Now, to ensure that the benefits of open science are shared and reciprocal and don't involve unfair or inequitable extraction of data and knowledge, or indeed unintended consequences, such as the extension of privilege and widening of technological and knowledge gaps, the recommendation spells out the core values of open science. And these, as you can see on the left-hand side of the slide here, are quality and integrity of science, collective benefits of open science and the potential for ensuring equity among researchers from developed and developing countries, and enabling fair and reciprocal sharing of scientific inputs and outputs, and respecting diversity and inclusiveness in science. And the recommendation also defines the principles that should guide any open science practice. And we can see those again on the right hand of the screen. And these are transparency, scrutiny, critique and reproducibility of open science, equality of opportunities that it provides for all, responsibility, respect and accountability that come with open sharing of knowledge, collaboration, participation, inclusion in open science, flexibility, as well as sustainability in the practices of open science. Now, to enable a fair and worldwide implementation of open science, member states are encouraged to prioritise 7 areas in their implementation of the recommendation. And these shown here on the slide are promoting a common understanding of open science and its associated benefits and challenges, as well as the diverse paths to open science. Developing an enabling policy environment for open science. Investing in infrastructure and services which contribute to open science. Investing in training, education, digital literacy and capacity building to enable researchers and other stakeholders to participate in open science. Fostering a culture of open science and aligning incentives for open science. Number 6 is promoting innovative approaches to open science at different stages in the scientific process. And the 7th is promoting international and multi-stakeholder cooperation in the context of open science with a view to reducing digital, technological and knowledge gaps. And of course, with this come challenges, and the key challenges in the implementation of the recommendation, which were raised by various actors and stakeholders of open science from different regions in the run-up to this, and in different disciplines. So these can really be summarized as the fact that a change in conventional scientific culture is needed, human and institutional capacity, the requirement for adequate infrastructures, including reliable internet connectivity, alignment of incentives and revision of criteria for evaluation of scientific excellence and scientific careers, and addressing the unintended negative consequences of open science practices. And to support countries in overcoming the challenges of implementation of the UNESCO recommendation on open science, UNESCO is mobilising partners and open science actors within and beyond the scientific community, from institutional and local levels to international levels, to provide expertise and take actions in these 5 impact areas. And you can see those at the bottom of the slide in this grey arrow. And those impact areas are capacity building, policy development, funding and incentives, apologies, development and sharing of infrastructures for open science, and monitoring. And UNESCO's role in the implementation of the recommendation is to provide for awareness raising and capacity building for open science among different actors. And the brochure I can mention, as you can see here on the slide, is already available in several languages, including Arabic, as you can see. Secondly, access to information through UNESCO Science and Open Solutions programs. Forum for exchange of ideas, good practices, lessons learned on the implementation of open science practices. Support for open science policy development and orientation. Support for open science capacity building for different actors. Monitoring of open science status, trends and impacts. Mobilisation of the Global Open Science Partnership, and building of coalitions and consortia for the advancement of open science. Now, when we look at the international level, in collaboration with partners and participants in the 5 open-ended working groups which we set up on these key impact areas for open science, we at UNESCO are working on, in collaboration with the partners mentioned, developing a series of supporting tools. So those include technical briefs, fact sheets and guidelines, which will shape an online, dynamic, evolving, what we've called an open science toolkit. And we're also going to create a smartphone application, which of course all these information is accessible to all, easy to use, and will be expanded and updated as we progress. Building capacity and creating a compendium of awareness raising building a compendium of awareness raising and capacity building, which is carried out or planned for open science, as well as training workshops on science for different open science actors. Collecting and mapping existing open science policies and strategies, which will feed into ultimately a global repository of open science policy instruments. The collection of best practices, again, this will form a compendium of open science best practices. Promoting open science infrastructures, particularly international, regional, and thematic open science platforms for the sharing of knowledge and best practices, with a focus on the UNESCO themes. So specifically, we're talking about biodiversity, water, disaster risk reduction, geosciences, open sciences, climate change, and so on. The next is analysing open science financing mechanisms and incentives to shape proposals for regional and thematic open science funding mechanisms and recommendations for the revision of current research, career assessment and evaluation criteria. And finally is the development of a global monitoring framework to support member states in monitoring the progress in the implementation of the recommendation, with a view to creating a global open science outlook based on reports and inputs from our member states. So in view of creating this global repository of open science policy instruments, we have done a preliminary mapping of the existing national policies that address open science, open access, open data, and/or open science. And at this early stage, our mapping is based on desktop research, and the results still do need to be verified and completed through the reports of member states and through monitoring the implementation of the recommendation, which will be carried out according to the regulations of every 4 years following the year of adoption of the recommendation. We've received from some member states, we're observing that countries in different regions are starting to integrate open science into their STI, science, technology, innovation policies, and are developing their open science policies, roadmaps and strategies based on the recommendation. And so far, we are not aware specifically of any specific policy on open science in the Arab states, and aware of one country that, where the policy refers to open data across government entities rather than open research data in their national strategy for data and AI. But we'd be very interested to hear if you have information otherwise, or additional information for specifically or most interestingly for countries in your region. Now, through its sorry, I've rather jumped ahead. Through its regional and field offices, UNESCO will provide support for the implementation of the recommendation at regional and national levels through support for regional fora and platforms for open science, supporting member states. So for the regional fora, we can say CELAC, the African Open Science Platform, the Arab Open Science Platforms, when we're looking at the regional level, supporting member states to exchange on and develop their national open science policies and strategies, mapping and supporting regional open science infrastructures to share data, information and best practices, collecting and sharing best practices in open science at institutional level, and identifying and connecting open science champion institutes in the regions to exchange on challenges and opportunities and to learn from each other, and delivering open science capacity building trainings for different stakeholders. And when we look at the Open Science Toolkit, which I mentioned a little earlier, we can see a little more detail there of what we're planning. And it will be, as I mentioned, an evolving collection of guides, policy briefs, fact sheets and indexes. And the aim, well, this will be launched on the 7th of December in a couple of months' time during the World Science Forum in Cape Town, South Africa. And the first set of elements will include in an introduction to the UNESCO recommendation on open science, various specific guides on capacity building, developing policies for open science, funding of open science, bolstering infrastructures for open science, some checklists on checklists for universities on how the open science recommendation can be implemented, and checklists for open access publishers on implementing the recommendation. We're also preparing a series of fact sheets and developing open indexes of open science resources, as you can see there in the slide, in these 4 areas of capacity building, open science, knowledge sharing platforms, and an observatory of science, technology, innovation and policy instruments. And we plan to launch the Arabic version of this toolkit during the regional forum of open science in the Arab region, which is being organized to take place in April next year in Amman. So by emphasizing that, like science, open science requires an enabling policy environments and standards at different levels, from institutional to national, regional and international. And the transition to open science will likely be gradual, as it requires awareness raising, education, investment, and international and interdisciplinary collaboration. And in some instances, we can say a fundamental change in mindset and approach. So we invite you all to implement the open science recommendation on open science in your research, at your institute, in your country, for the benefit of all. And we please ask you to share your best practices and experiences with us via email or and by contributing to the global call for best practices in open science. And more details of that can be found on our website, and the details are on the slide. And we also invite you to join us in the working groups, the 5 working groups I mentioned earlier. Again, details of how to join those can be found on our website. Of course, at the Open Science Day at the World Science Forum on the 7th of December in South Africa, and as just mentioned, the regional forum on open science in the Arab region. And for that, please refer to our web pages. And with that, I come to the end of my presentation. Again, thank you very much indeed for the opportunity to present this. And once again, apologies for not being able to join you. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. Let me thank you all and thank the organizers, especially Emily and Knowledge E and UNESCO for inviting me to be part of this activity. I was supposed to speak about infrastructure. I will do that, but I will add to that something related to ASREN's, what's ASREN doing, especially in open science, and what is our methodology of thinking of science and so on. So to start with, this is me because I added this slide because if you look at the conference brochure, it's missing my information about me, so that's me. I started work at Just University in Jordan. It was the first Arab university to provide services over internet. That's about 1997. Then I established the National Research and Education Network of Jordan, and now I established the ASREN, the Arab Regional Research and Education Network. So to start with, who is the crucial? Is it, I can say that science cooperation is crucial for the development. Examples, United Nations SDGs, like climate actions and other things. Now, digital infrastructure is more crucial because it's needed for the science cooperation. And if you look at the science digital infrastructure, it's usually managed by research and education networks, which I will come to. What about open science? I'll talk about open science and how it is related to the infrastructure and how it's related to national research and education networks. This slide only is that something happening that at the same time this week and in the same city, in the same country. It's in both are in Cairo, 2 events in the same time. So it's a call for working all together and not duplicating things and so on. And this is a sign that everybody is interested and following up in open science. Though it's maybe more into specific in policies, but it's also important that events and activities are taking place around our region. So that's a good sign. Now I will go very quickly about national research and education networks. National research and education networks are dedicated for research and education only. So it's not commercial internet, it's dedicated it works like exactly the internet, but it's only limited to the research and education networks like universities. They are non-commercial. They come at different levels at the national level, national research and education networks, and at the regional level, regional research and education network, and the global one. I will go through another slide to show why is it. Now, there are many drivers for these research networks. If you look at the technology, now it's evolving and offering computing resources and access to, there is a need for multimedia, need for high performance computing, like CERN, for example, and so on. The social aspect is very important, that we bring only research and education communities together to work together into like virtual environment and so on. The economy is very important also, because you will not be able, you don't have to duplicate investment and efforts. You can utilize available infrastructure. It is scattered around the world, and it can be interconnected and can be utilized for everyone through good network. And this is what infrastructure does. And why is it important for open science, which I will come to. I think I will skip this slide. By the way, I have many slides. I believe the slides with the organizers for you to go through, because I have only 20 minutes. So let me focus only on infrastructure and open science together. So NRENs provide a lot of services that I will come to through different slides, but this is the main structure, what I'm talking about. If you look down, you will see the institutions are connected together into at the national level. So I'm bringing examples from all over the world. And these institutions, they could be universities, could be research hospitals, could be research centers, could be research first instruments, facilities like Sesame or like CERN and so on. They are connected at the national level. Then it's called, and as I said, and at the regional level, you will see that ASREN is one of the global, or the regional research and education network connecting the Arab region. This is the status around the world. You will see that our region is, many countries are missing. They don't have NREN yet, but some others already have it. I cannot avoid putting this slide because it represents the giant network, which is the one of the main and at the heart of the research and education networks. And you see everybody is connected there. The good thing that most of the connections are funded by the European Commission, and we are part of that connection, funding also, which I will come to in a moment. Now, ASREN. ASREN is a non-profit organization. It has been established in 2011 under the patronage of Association of League of Arab States. And you see the opening, and Danush was at the heart of the Arab region in Cairo here, at the League of Arab States. This was announced in, as I said, in 2011, with a vision and mission around establishing good infrastructure to support research and research and education collaboration. It was endorsed by most regional and national entities in the Arab region, and also the European Commission. We have 3 main objectives. The first one is to build, and let me start by the second option, one which is very important for us, contribute to the development of Arab national research and education networks in the Arab region, and we did that. We supported many Arab countries to develop their NRENs, and for those who have NRENs, we supported them to enhance their NRENs. The first objective is to establish the Pan-Arab Research and Education Network, which I will present in one slide later on, which we have been successful in establishing at least 2 exchange points, one of them in London and one of them is starting now in Cairo. And the third one is to facilitate utilizing this infrastructure through capacity building, through workshops and through services, which I will list some services that we provide to our communities. So our main areas of intervention are also about dedicated research and education connectivity, which we are doing now, research and education services like Federation of Access, like F.O.R.M, which I will list down in a couple of slides. So, science cooperation and computing and community engagement and scientific computing and the cloud, of course. This is what is going on in our region. You will see that there are many Arab countries having their endurance. These are represented giants in Jordan, Ankabut in Emirates, Somaliland in Somalia, and so on. So most of the Arab countries already have either established INRIN or they are about to establish, or some of them already have mature INRIN to support the national infrastructure. ASREN is now, I can see that we are partnering with the world, recognized by many organizations. You can see the list and it's evolving. Maybe this is not updated list. We have more and more as for ASREN to be partnered with these entities, especially the European Commission, the support of League of Arab States, Federation of Arab Scientific Research Councils, Association of Arab Universities, and so on. This is a status of connectivity at the national level. So you'll see some Arab countries are connected, some others are not connected yet. We are trying to support them. There are some countries that they have some conflicts or political instability that we are unable to connect, but they are on our radar and we are discussing with some of them right now. F.O.R.M is a service that we provide to our community. It's educational roaming, which I think some of you know. The F.O.R.M, it's a Wi-Fi service that's available at the global level. So anyone with F.O.R.M account, he can connect to any institution that he goes there. He can connect to his resources immediately without going into having a username and password for that network and so on. Federation of Access, I think this is very important for everyone to be part, because if we want to have open science and access and so on, access federation and authentication and authorization, I think we need this service to be available. Unfortunately, now it's available in some countries, but not all of the Arab countries, which we are supporting. We're doing capacity building for our community to develop that. Now we are trying to support that in Tunisia and Egypt and Jordan also, and Palestine. This is a project. I think it has been. We have been working with the European Commission.
نعمل مع المفوضية الأوروبية.
We have been working with the European Commission for the last 15 years. This project was one of the instrumental projects to support the establishment of ASREN, and also the establishment of the connectivity through the co-funding that is provided by the European Commission. Another project, Africa Connect 3, which is now live and operational and until the end of 2024. It covers all Africa through three partners: ASREN in North Africa, Continental Alliance in East and South Africa, and WACREN in West and Central Africa. The main objective is to provide mainly the first work package is about connectivity. So we provide connectivity to most of the Arab countries. For our region and ASREN, all of them are connected. Now the other thing is to provide a network operation center, network services, and so on, which we are conducting now. One important aspect is work package 1.3 is a cloud-based infrastructure for African open science. So we are working on cloud infrastructure to support open science, and we have concluded some steps which I'll come through in a while. The trust and identity service is also very important for open science. federated infrastructure. Identity management for librarians also is another component that we are happy that it's part of this project. By the way, ASREN's funding is around 7 million out of 34 million for our activities, which I am mentioning now. Capacity building, of course, women empowerment, and also which is community engagement with the user communities. It's another very important aspect that also it's covered in Africa Connect 3. So Africa Connect 3 is supporting us through many dimensions: connectivity, which is needed as infrastructure, cloud, capacity. So we can give some attention and for capacity building for open science, and also we can provide the cloud for open science also in our plan, which is now we will be deploying some cloud services early next year. This is another thing, part of Africa Connect 3, which I will skip. Another slide which I will skip also about science engagement and science cooperation. Now we are brainstorming with the European Commission on the next phase of the project. Is 20. We may call it Africa Connect 4, but it will span from 2025 until 2029. Our focus there is on infrastructure, connectivity, science cooperation, open science and open access, open science cloud, community engagement, and capacity building. So this picture is from our last meeting last September on how we can think together in bringing the best to the continent in terms of services, and ASREN's focus on these topics. Which represent the infrastructure at the national and the regional level. These are slides I will skip. We'll go with one slide. Every item is summarized in a separate slide, but I will just go through it very quickly. NRENs, now, if you look at observation around the world, the global trends, priorities, climate actions, SDGs, and so on, internet governance, there is a role for NRENs in all of them, either through directly or indirectly. They could be the host, they could be the convener, they could be the operator, they could be the service convener, or they could be the secretariat, or they could be do anything. NRENs have the opportunity to show up because the NRENs are the main provider for infrastructure at the national level. So we invite NRENs here. Maybe we don't have NRENs here, but at least a message that we want NRENs to take care of what they can offer, especially when it comes to science engagement. I will skip these slides because they are detailed of each item. I mentioned that I was interviewed in one of the magazines, and the idea of having a new role of NRENs, and it was presented, published all over the world. I think it's worth looking at. For supporting the development of infrastructure in the Arab region, we tried together with Oman, and happy that the next open science in the Arab region will be in Oman, because they are doing good in that. We issued the Muscat Declaration last year. It's a message actually to the political and the decision making in the Arab region, either at the national level or at the regional level, that you need to support the infrastructure in each country through developing good network, good research and education network that will maintain and sustain the services to the communities, and to support the regional efforts, and also to be part of the new role of NRENs and so on. I think we are trying to do political also lobbying and sending messages to the community. Now, it's the main focus was also on infrastructure, because if we start with infrastructure, we can evolve through services and advanced services and so on. So ASREN's efforts to support open science, we did many activities. My colleague Raed will be speaking in the afternoon about that in details, but I will go through some of them. We have signed MOU with the Association of Arab Universities. another MOU with the Federation of Arab Scientific Research Council, and we are discussing with UNESCO to have an MOU with them to collaborate together to have work at the pan-Arab level in science. It's not only about open science, it's also about science engagement, science cooperation, science dialogue, and could be also science diplomacy in essence context, because science diplomacy is sometimes a vague word and could be used in different dimensions. We are part of EOSC. We are official observer there, and we are going to be a member soon. We have participated in the African Open Science Platform as one of the main contributors to the platform. But now, African Open Science Platform, as our colleague in Paris just said, where is the Arab Open Science Platform? Which I think this is the call, my call actually, to have something Arab Open Science Cloud or something like that. I will come to that. We are also with the East Europe also initiative and National Information for Open Science in Europe. This is very important milestone that we have signed an MOU with La Francia is a regional harvester in Latin America. We have signed the MOU with them to start harvesting open data repositories in our region, the Arab region. And this we have recently signed that in June this year, and we'll start deploying this service on our cloud. Early next year it will be available as, and we are now identifying the Arab open data repositories that we could harvest together as at least a first step towards having something to demonstrate in terms of cooperation in open data and open access. Now we have, of course, cloud now is debate and whether you want to build your own private cloud or you want to go to the cloud providers. But we are doing both. Now we started our own cloud. It's now in our POP in London. It's full of services. We can cloud infrastructure as a service. We will deploy a La Francia there also. By the way, the reference also part of it will include Arabic content, of course. We tested that, and we will provide Arabic contents also. We are discussing with the European cloud procurement model to discuss with the cloud providers on how we can enhance our cloud at the commercial level to be available to our community soon. We will be starting the process of procurement early next year, and I think it will need maybe 6 to 9 months to be available to the community. Now, actually, ASREN, we always call for science dialogue. As I mentioned, we provided a concept document to the European Commission, DG INTPA, DG RTD, which is Research and Development, Research and Innovation. I'm sorry, DG RTD, which is Research and Innovation, about science cooperation and societal development to advance progress in towards SDGs and climate action and so on. Open science, open access, and open data, open science cloud, and we have proposed to them that we want to work together on establishing Arab states open science cloud, which is something that comparable to the European open science cloud. And the proposal is accepted, but they are discussing how it can be addressed and funded. And also, we are trying to bring also Arab stakeholders on the table, so that it's not ASREN's proposal, it's the region, the proposal of our region, entire region. For that, ASREN has been the convener for the Arab Science Cooperation Summit for the second year. This year it wasn't virtual. This Science Summit comes every year during the United Nations General Assembly. And we'd like to thank Nizar because he contributed to this summit. Mainly it's about enhancing science cooperation and providing opportunities, and also open the dialogue with around the world. It will be next year conducted in New York during the United Nations General Assembly 78th, but it will be also in face-to-face basis, because we will be inviting politicians, decision makers, donors, and so on to be part of it. The good thing that next year it will be United Nations decided to go for the future summit, which is another planning tool or whatever opportunity for the next post SDGs and so on. So they call it the future of summit, and it has three main pillars: sustainability, solidarity, and science. So look, science is the top priority even at the United Nations level. Another event that we conduct also during the United Nations General Assembly. Now, this Catalyst Declaration is about trying to cooperate all together, three regions, three continents, and a giant from Europe, Red Clara, it's the Regional Research and Education Network of Latin America, ASREN. They work together. We have signed this declaration in Katowice, in Poland, so that we work together to support Earth observation. This is another example of our science engagement, and we are trying to build science triangle for climate actions through these three continents. And we are going beyond that for other opportunities like climate and so on. Now, for the future, we are working hard with the European Commission. Now, this opportunity, I think I want you all to know about it. We are thinking now of long-term connectivity, 25 years contract, and high speed. We are talking about 200 gigabit per second per country. So this is a huge amount of bandwidth that we need to utilize all together to bring to the community. So the future in terms of infrastructure, at least at the national level, it's there. And now we have DG NEAR. If you look at the DG NEAR, which is the European Director General for Neighborhood, they have contributed 40 million euros for that. So it will be utilizing some submarine cables to connect North Africa to Europe at 200 gigabit per second for 25 years. We are supporting science cooperation and science and open science in the Arab region. We have conducted various events. Last week we concluded an event in Morocco, and in July we have another event in open science in the way ahead in Tunisia. 1 minute. So this is our last event last year, but why I wanted to talk about last year. If you look, we have the dedicated day for the first Arab concept policies, and we have also an open science in terms of platforms and initiatives. That's for last year. For this year, we invite you all to our conference. It's EH 2022. Fortunately, we have our host here with us, Academy of Scientific Research and Technology. They are our hosts, so thank you for hosting our event here. We will announce the venue and the details this week. So you are all welcome, and we'll dedicate part of the event for open science also. And it is something that I keep nagging, and I want you to rely on NRENs, because they are the holder of the infrastructure. If we support NRENs, then they can. At the regional, I try to present it at the regional level. We are confident that we are providing good infrastructure in terms of computer resources, in terms of cloud, in terms of connectivity. But at the national level, we still need a good NREN that need to be supported, and maybe at the institutional level, we need also to see how we can support the institutions. But the priority is NRENs. So this is my last call to support NRENs. So that we can have better infrastructure at the national level. And that's all. Thank you.
I'm not going to take long, because, you know, open science, as our colleague from the headquarters mentioned, open science is definitely a new movement. And there is a lot to be done in terms of policies. Of course, if you had the infrastructure, then you benefited from that. If you don't, then you need to look at the infrastructure part. And the same with capacity building. I'm using that slide again only to focus on the items that I put in red. Publishing as fast as possible, to sharing knowledge as early as possible. You know how much capacity building should go in there to actually move you from the culture of what you're doing now to what you're supposed to be doing tomorrow. They are completely different philosophies, and for that, you need to be so ready. Again, the other part says open science brings about socioculture. This is something that I just mentioned, and technological change. And these two, they bear a heavy load on capacity building. Now, human resource development will be essential, definitely, to support open science. So because there isn't what do you call it, the infrastructure for open science, and here infrastructure is not the hardware infrastructure. I'm saying that there are not the different pieces that you are that you are supposed to use. I'm trying to think, how is it that you can actually make use of what's happening? Remember on this slide, remember the global COVID. What happened with that is that we had huge advances in our digital world. And I think that is something that we need to dwell on. And that is also something that we need to look at, what capacities are needed to actually be able to ride that wave. So I'm thinking, while I was putting this presentation together, maybe we should have a proposal to develop the human resource development strategy for the Arab region. Who's supposed to do that? Maybe UNESCO can support, but definitely member states need to feel the urgency and need to actually have their strategy on human capacity. And that strategy should actually reflect the principles required to effectively embed a culture. Again, the word culture comes in. And it's not easy, by the way, to change cultures. So I don't know. The new generation, part of that are my kids. They are, you know, very savvy with IT, with mobile phones and stuff like that. So it might be a way of actually encouraging a culture change, maybe through mobile applications. It's just a thought that just occurred to me now. So principles required to effectively embed a culture of open science at institutional and national levels. That's also a tough one. You know, when you want to move our universities from basic science to applied science, from science to technology to the word I, which is innovation, we're finding huge burdens and difficulties. And also with open science, to be able to actually recommend change within institutions, that is also going to be difficult. But what sort of principles that you need to do? It includes issues such as research integrity. And I think today we talked a lot about whether researchers would have the integrity to actually do research in the open science sense, and then the public availability of research outputs. Then you can also think about that strategy to foster open science literacy. That would be also essential for the Arab region to achieve meaningful competitiveness at the continental and the global levels, together with other digital and information competencies. The movement is new. And if we don't ride the wave with the other regions, we'll be left behind. Just like, I hate to say it, just like everything else. You know, you think about inventions, and then I think about the Arab region, and then you have to excuse me. Sometimes I do this. I think about bicycles. Okay, people invented the bicycles. Okay, the bikes. Okay, and we only imported it. I don't think we even have an industry that produces bicycles today. People went to the motorcycles, and we only bought motorcycles. We never did them. People did the cars. People, did the rockets, the airplanes, and we are just consumers. I want to sleep one night and wake up in the morning and see that we are becoming an industrial society. Is that going to happen? Maybe open science will do it. Let's see if it does. So we also need to secure support, and that would be required for the development of an accredited curriculum covering open science skills, training that fosters behaviors, again behaviors coming in, again cultural issues, such as information technology and data literacy from primary school through the whole educational system. These are just brainstorm ideas that I'm throwing out there. But if you look at them, they are essential. When people talk about research and development, I would call them our kids. By the way, I'm very old. I can say I call them kids. The kids come to college with little bit knowledge about how to do research, how to do a simple science project. So are we only going to teach them R&D when they're at college level? I think that is a little bit too late. So if we do something at the early stages, maybe that is something that should work. Now, when you talk about enabling policies environment, even policy making needs training and needs capacity building. When you talk about investing in infrastructure, again, I said it in the morning, what is the type of infrastructure that is required? Who in the Arab region can stand up and say, I have the expertise and talk about it? Okay, so we need capacity building. So I also jot down under investing in capacity building, I think about 6 or 7 items. I'm going to read them very quickly. Develop national human resource development strategy for promotion of open science. That is the number 1 idea. 2 is develop e-learning platform and training program for all levels of education from cradle to grave. 3rd is set targets and implement plans, including funding to train critical numbers of data scientists for the region. And this critical mass is something that our region lacks in every single science discipline. You don't have the critical mass to use science to transform it to wealth. That is very important. If you don't breed and have the critical mass of scientists, researchers, you're not going to get there. And of course, that will bring you back to square one, where brain drain is taking place. So people are actually, you spend money and systems and everything and effort educating the kids. They go to, to school, they go to college. When they graduate, they say bye-bye. Number 4, design training programs for research infrastructure management. Create training programs for policy advisors on the benefits of open science and potential initiatives to support it in the future. Define who could be the main entity, regional or national, to play a key role in advocacy of open science. The political will is always there. The ministries would always say that we support, but we need something practical on the ground. Create a training program for all researchers about the intentions of the IP legislation. I think that was one of the questions in the morning, and how these can be met alongside open science objectives. That is very important. Okay, then compilation or index of the existing open science training modules and materials. And number 9, creation and delivery of new and additional necessary training modules. I think this is something that Ezra talked about in his presentation. For the different open science actors, that is important. And last but not least is promote cooperation among countries in capacity building. Even that would be a challenge, because the level of collaboration and cooperation needs actually to be rigorously supported. And I think with that, I close. Develop a standardized set of open science competencies. I'm thinking here about UNESCO, aligned with the specific researcher career stages and specific actors' needs, and develop recognized skills and training programs in support of the attainment of these competencies. I think this phrase basically says it all, and I yield my time to Ms. Emily. Thank you very much.
We do have time for some questions. Forgive me. The online delegates have been, their questions have been WhatsApped to me, so we'll run through a couple of those and then open it up to the room. So first of all, hang on. I'm addressing this to everyone, just to say, I feel I have my not facing you properly, so apologies. So first of all, we have a message saying some journal databases, such as Scopus, require all articles to have English abstracts. UNESCO's definition of open science advocates for multilingualism in the sharing of scientific knowledge. What would be an efficient way to make sure that when metric-based systems are utilized, journal and book publications in all languages are adequately taken into account? This is a question very close to my heart, so I'm very curious to know what you will all say. And Dr. Ezra, if you are here, we can't see you, so shout out if you want to answer as well.
But indeed, there is, this question was actually raised in the morning. And again, I say it is definitely an area that needs to be tackled. But there is a lot of work that needs to go in there. I know, in terms of, for example, Chinese as a language, or Japanese or Russian, the governments are fully kind of supporting. So whenever there is something that is worthwhile, you will find it automatically in their, translated in their language. Now, the Arab region have got its share of Arab journals, okay, but to have a published article to be translated, again, the facilities, I think, are not there yet, or it's very expensive to buy those translators that can actually do the right, the right job. So it is another area that needs to be looked at. It's another area that ASREN needs to spend money on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, you've got
no, actually, my colleague in the afternoon, you can ask him this question because he can. It's I'm not in the details of the process of the open science itself, rather than just at the high level. So my colleague, I think he will be able to answer this question again. Right? You can raise it to him in the second session afternoon.
excellent.
Okay, beautiful.
Now let's open up to the room. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, a gentleman over here. I'll bring a microphone, but there are also microphones knocking around the tables as well. If anyone wants one. 1 second. Getting my steps in today.
Thank you. My name is Ahmad Isa, Vice President of Arab Federation of Library and Information and Head of Library and Information Science Department in Helwan University. My suggestion to our colleagues is UNESCO developed a standard for to be ready to be open science foundation and to increase movement, as Dr. Nazar said, new movement in Arab countries. Should we have Arab open science index or indicators as a statistical measurement to measure the gap and rank the Arab countries based on the movement to open science or not? And who should take lead to these indicators? Thank you.
Who's going to answer this one?
Well, no, it's a tough one. When you talk about indicators, the region is not good with data collection to start with. So, even if you go around and do the exercise, your second part of the question answers it. Who is going to be responsible for doing it?
But we have to start, as in United Emirates, start the knowledge indicators. Someone have to start, some institution have to start. If UNESCO didn't start or Arab leagues didn't start, who can start these indicators?
No, I fully agree with the importance, but I'm looking at the logistical dilemma that we will go in there with the process. That is what I'm actually worried about, because I can say, yes, this is a great idea. Then how are we going to do it? Okay, STI indicators in the region is at its worst. They did the innovation scoreboard and it didn't fly. So adding another set of indicators, the SDGs have got their own indicators, okay? And there are tons of them under each SDG. Now, how is that going to happen? I think open science in itself, if you use the movement and you create the networks and you have the infrastructure and data is being collected in an automated fashion, then a lot of indicators can be picked up and a lot of reports can come out of that so that you can evaluate the situation. But to me, I'm just making that cartoon character in my head. Which one came first? Is it the hen or the egg? So are we going to do the indicators first, or are we going to do the open science first? I hope you're living with me the dilemma that I have in my head. And if you have an answer to that, I'll be very happy to hear it.
Dr. Nadar, I think if you agree with me, it's the movement of going to open science is economical decision, because economy is playing a very big role on that part. So I think if we didn't watch what we are doing concerning from the economy point of view, I think we would be more slow in implementing or moving. So my very personal opinion is that before moving, I agree with you, of course, about the dilemma and what will be the hen and the hen or egg, but we have to go for the obstacles, the economy obstacles that we can meet. Before going to open science, we have the copyright issue, we have economy issue because of the publishers, of course, and who will fund the project and who will fund the paper and who will make the open access, and why paying for the open access, what the institution behind. So I think if you agree with me, I think we have to put economy as one of the very important variable in our discussions about moving to open science.
Well, I tend to agree. Just adding one little thing, if open science as a movement picks up, there is a lot of cost effectiveness in there, because for developing countries to learn from their peers in developed countries through open science, that is one way of quick hands-on training on doing research, on doing analysis, on collecting data. So it is a cost-effective process if it's at its best. Now, how to get from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 5 seconds? That would be the problem. It's not just our issue. It's the issue of the rest of the world. You know, publishers are there to, you know, make, okay, not too much money, a little bit of a cap on their expenditure in terms of profit. And that's why you cannot basically ask them to do much. The governments need to do a lot, but governments in our you know, in our region, not a lot of them have healthy economies to start with. So what you're trying to do is say it's an economic issue. So I'm worried if I fully agree. Does that mean that it's destined to fail? If we actually look at it from the economic point of view. So I'm not sure. It's you know, for optimization problems, there is something called the complex problems. A complex problem is the type of problem that is ill-defined and has got multi-dimension, multi-objective, and there is no clear one optimal solution for it. You need now this is my specialty area, so so you need only to identify the feasible region of where the solution could be and pick up the best solution out of a number. Is open science going to be a complex problem? I hope not. With a little bit of collaboration with people who have versus the people who have not, I think we can make things work. So I urge from this podium here, people who have the money to pitch in today so that we all gain a brighter future. Thank you.
On that note, oh,
Somebody else
yeah,
wants to say something.
please, perfect.
He has to say
I
something.
think we need to leave the mic with me and Nazar, and you can have a rest. Okay, very quickly regarding your question on Arab Connect. It's a project. Africa Connected is a project. That's all. So it's part of the money that we are utilizing and trying to. Now back to the Arab Connect. We started Arab Connect initiative and idea since and the obstacles and what is going on. I want to leave you with two examples. The proposal that we prepared in 2015, it was about to bring to lease a fiber between, let's say, starting from Kuwait, to connect Kuwait to the Gulf, then to the Arab Sea, to the Red Sea, to the Mediterranean Sea, and believe me, it was only about $5 million, and we could secure it. That's the belt. I mean, we could secure almost the 5 million. The obstacle was for the last mile, which is the cross connect, which is related to the pricing and the monopoly in the Arab region. I can mention country by country where is the monopoly. Or I can bring one example on that, connecting from mainland in New York in America to one of the Arab countries is much cheaper than connecting from the cross connect, which sometimes it goes to 3 meters of fiber. The 3 meters of fiber will cost us more than the connectivity over the Atlantic. So we have the proposal is there. If you you ask me for yes, it's there. If you have something to help, we are ready.
At least, okay. North Africa, at least in North Africa, there are a number of countries that they don't have connectivity. Africa 3 to Africa 4, can you actually include those in there? Forget about the
let's say the countries eligible with the co-funding with the European Commission, yes, including East Mediterranean, including Sudan, including Djibouti, Comoros, Mauritania, all of them.
Okay.
But the Gulf and Iraq and are not included. Cannot be, for example.
No, I mean Africa 4. If you can include those Arab states that are within Africa, we will thank you for that.
I'm working on this.
Discussion.
Okay.
Serious.